What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about Canadians moving to Alberta in record numbers. Alberta! Alberta of all places! What on earth is going on in Alberta? I gotta know. This is a news story that I found that sounded very interesting to me because a lot of Americans like myself, we don't know anything about what's going on in Alberta. I mean, me in particular, I've done a couple videos about things in Alberta. Like, there's one, I learned that Alberta is rat-free. It's the only place on Earth that's rat-free. That's pretty cool. The Calgary Stampede. I learned about the Calgary Stampede, a little slice of Texas kind of cowboys and horses going on in Alberta. So maybe if you hate rats and you love cowboys, Alberta is perfect. But being completely serious here, there's obviously something going on significant about why we're seeing such a record influx of people to Alberta, particularly this year in 2023. And I just want to understand why. What's the reason, actually? This is very interesting. There's actually a couple of news reports about this that I wanted to watch here for a second, a couple of short clips. This one's called Alberta Sees Record Population Boom, mostly due to international migration. Okay.
More people than ever before are choosing to call Alberta home.
Yeah.
Alberta's seeing a record population boom, mostly because people from other countries and other provinces see it as a better place to live. Alicia Fieldberg reports.
They see it as a better place to live. That's getting somewhat to the meat of this matter, but what exactly about Alberta makes it a better place to live? And it's interesting she's saying this is not just international people from other countries immigrating to Canada and choosing Alberta. This is also a lot of Canadians just within Canada who are deciding to up and leave their province and go to Alberta in particular. And that's very interesting.
We left everything at home in Kiev.
Olga Vozna and her husband started this inspiration board before fleeing the war in Ukraine.
Oh.
8 months ago, they arrived in Calgary, and recently their daughter started first grade.
She's so happy here, and it's really important for us because we need a peaceful place.
Her family's one of
This is an immigrant from the Ukraine, and she even learned that Alberta was a really great place to move and to live. But again, why Alberta? I just want somebody please tell me.
many that contributed to a record boom in Alberta's population. According to Statistics Canada, Alberta was home to 4.7 million people as of July 1st.
Okay.
That's 184,000 people higher than the same time last year.
Wow. 184,000 extra people in Alberta this year.
And much higher than the previous record of just over 106,000 set back in 2013.
Oh, it's also the highest rate that the population has increased by as well. In 2013, the population of Alberta increased by 100,000. That was considered the record, the most that Alberta has ever increased. This year, it blew that out of the water, right? What was the number again? It was... if I can get it, 184,000, almost twice as much as the previous record.
Back in 2013.
We had record population growth. So we saw over 184,000 people added to the province in just 1 year.
Wow.
That's very significant.
International
Especially the population of Canada now is 40 million. And this was almost 200,000 people. 200,000 out of 40 million. It's not a huge percent, but I don't know. What is it? Let me do the math real quick. 40, 1, 2, 3 million divided by 200,000? 40 million? Is that correct? Did I get all the zeros correct here? I think so. 1 out of 200 people, 0.5%. I think, if my math is correct, 0.5% of the Canadian population moved to Alberta, which is pretty significant.
migration is the biggest driver of this boom, making up 61% of the total increase. Hassan
Oh, wait. That was important. What did she just say?
Biggest driver of this boom, making up
What's the biggest driver? What's the biggest driver of the boom?
That's very significant.
International migration is the biggest driver of this boom, making up
Okay.
61% of the total increase.
Okay.
Hassan
International, like people from other countries are 60-ish% of the total number of people going to Alberta.
Anwari moved here 2 weeks ago due to the Taliban takeover in his home country of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
A lot of people killed.
Like many people, he chose Alberta due to its stronger job growth and relatively affordable housing.
We heard
Affordable housing. There we go. Okay, now we're starting to get some reasons. Affordable housing, job opportunity. This is making sense.
Canada is the land of opportunity for everyone, and comparing to other provinces and cities of Canada, it's better to be here, and there is a little bit cheap.
They look at
Okay, so people are saying compared to the other provinces in Canada, maybe Alberta in particular has more attractive housing prices, more attractive job opportunities. It's kind of like there's some similarities in the United States where you kind of want to get further from big like population centers. Like probably it'd be very difficult to get a house and a career in Toronto, Ontario. Probably. Like people do it, obviously. It's one of the most populated cities, the most populated in Canada and on the planet, but it's difficult. And from what I've heard, basically impossible to afford a new home or rent places, or it's very, very like hard on you financially. But move to somewhere like Alberta, which isn't particularly known as like a giant metropolitan population hub, maybe Calgary, but in other cities. But there's a lot of just what I would call small town, there's a lot of small town America where you can get much, much cheaper housing. Whereas if you're trying to live in like Hawaii or New York, it's going to be $1 million to get a small house. And if you're trying to live like in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi or something, it's probably going to be a lot cheaper.
Toronto and it's really daunting, huge city, too big, and they look at Vancouver, they think, oh, it's so expensive.
People
Right.
in other parts of Canada are choosing Alberta as well.
Yeah.
Migration from other provinces make up 31% of the increase.
Wow.
The vast majority come from Ontario and BC.
Oh, okay, there you go. Most of these people, most of these Canadians are coming from Ontario and British Columbia, which are probably on the more expensive end of the spectrum of living costs. They're just like, forget it. Like, I can't survive. Like, it's too much financial strain. Move to Alberta. This is actually all starting to make a lot of sense to me. I think I get it. It mostly has to do with the cost of living.
This influx of people is affecting housing demand, but it's also adding to the labor force, which is growing at its fastest annual pace since 2007, according to ATB Financial.
Wow.
We still have elevated job vacancies in this province compared to where we were before the pandemic.
Well, now, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how long this continues, because at a certain point, the secret's out. Everyone's moving to Alberta. Everyone, not everyone, but, a lot of Canadians and a lot of international immigrants are moving to Alberta. Eventually, housing prices will go up, like the supply and demand will even out. There won't be as much job opportunity, and maybe you'll see somewhere else in Canada become more attractive for people to move to.
People to fill some of those jobs.
Vosna never expected her family would leave Kyiv.
A really good life there, but the war happened in our country.
But she's grateful they chose to start over in Alberta.
Nice.
Annalie.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. I have another clip here talking about people are moving to Alberta from other provinces in record numbers. Again, this is international, like people from other countries immigrating to Alberta, but it's also a lot of Canadians living in Canada.
New data from Statistics Canada shows that Alberta is quickly growing. In fact, the province added people from other provinces at a higher rate than has ever been recorded.
Wow.
Is the province ready for this population boom? The CBC's Anis Hadari reports.
And it's interesting this is happening right now in 2023. It's like somehow and this is true in America as well, somehow America and Canada, we've hit this critical mass where the cost of living is so high, inflation is running rampant, the price of goods is so high, and in Canada, I know the price of grocery store items and grocery store food is really high, and the cost of a new house is absurd. No one can buy a new house. No one wants to sell their old house because they have a low interest rate locked in, and the world is just crumbling. But at least we can all move to Alberta. At least there's that.
I'm standing in front of something that a lot of folks in Toronto or Vancouver don't get to see very often.
When politicians...
What did he say? I'm standing in front of something people from Toronto don't get to see very often.
Something that a lot of folks in Toronto or Vancouver don't get to see very often.
A house? Is he talking about a house? It's like funny how serious. I'm standing in front of something people don't get to see very much. It is a house, and it's sadly for a lot of younger people who don't own a home and dream of owning one, and people in just bad financial spots in general can't own a home in this market. So maybe this is just like so tragically true that it's making me chuckle a bit.
When politicians said Alberta was calling, in Toronto, Michael Monge answered.
The dream of owning a home in Toronto, you would get more value in Calgary, or at least that was the thought.
Alberta is calling.
The campaign...
You'd get more value in Calgary, more value in Alberta. As in, for the amount of money you're paying, like $1 million in Toronto would get you a pretty small house, probably attached to other houses, like in the city or something. Whereas just some random house in Alberta, maybe not even in a big city, for $1 million, you could probably buy like a mansion or something like that. It'd be a ridiculous house, an absurd house, which is pretty darn attractive to people. I mean, even if you only have, back in the good old days when, especially in America, you could buy a really, really nice house for, this was 20 years ago or 30, I think, like for $200,000. $300,000 would buy you in an amazing house, upper middle class house. Now, the average price of a house in America is $400,000, I think. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure similar things are happening in Canada as well.
To lure others to Alberta maybe worked too well, as new Calgary transplants are finding out.
Alberta is calling. The Alberta is calling marketing campaign has worked too well.
We're seeing herds of people lining up for a reasonable condo. And when I say reasonable, it's like less than $1,800.
Wow.
Alberta saw the most people move there from inside Canada. More than 56,000 people net from other provinces.
Wow.
The most of any of them.
56,000 people. And it's a big deal to get up and move from your home to a completely different province. It's a big deal. Probably you might be leaving your family and friends and your work, and apparently it's just at a point where it's worth it. It just makes sense for a lot of people to find cheaper places to live.
And a record. But record numbers can add strain to already tight services for those from Canada and around the world.
When you have to wait, anywhere from 6 months, maybe even up to a year to just access your first English language class, that sets you back.
We've never seen this kind of growth.
Is that for international folks moving to Alberta? Now the wait times for English language classes are really, really long. I've never even considered or thought about things like that.
Population growth can mean economic growth too, but adds challenges.
It takes a while to build more infrastructure. It takes about roads, utilities, and all this. So we have to adjust to this, and on a scale that we've never had to do before.
True. So now Alberta is having to adjust. That makes a lot of sense. Like a record influx of people coming to your province for the largest amount in history this year. So yeah, they're going to have to adjust. Jobs are going to be less common. They have to build more. He was talking about building literal infrastructure, places to live, more roads for the bigger population.
Public services like healthcare or education will face higher pressures.
Alberta, we're a country with the fastest growing population in the world.
Oh, wait, what was that?
Higher pressures.
Alberta, we're a country with the fastest growing population in the world,
Wow.
exceeding anything you see in Africa. So that's a big deal.
If Alberta was a country, it would be the fastest growing country in the world? Is that true? That's a good way of putting this into perspective. Like, you cannot understate how massive this migration, the great Albertan migration of 2023, I decree.
The province says it will ensure Albertans have access to services, but has previously projected the population will keep going up, jumping from 4.7 to more than 5 million later this decade.
Wow. 300,000 extra people, 4.7 million to 5 million. That's a big percent increase of the population of Alberta.
Anis Haydari, CBC News, Calgary.
All right, and there we go. Fascinating. Those are really well done news stories. I have a much better grasp of why Alberta. That was my big question going into this. Just like, why Alberta? Why? I got nothing against Alberta, but why Alberta? I just looked up some things on Google here I wanted to look at. What is Alberta known for? Is a question I had. Like, if you're thinking about lifting up your whole life and moving it all to Alberta, what's in Alberta? Besides the Calgary Stampede and no rats. It's known for natural beauty, wildlife, oil reserves, farming and cattle ranching, the Rocky Mountains, cold winters, farming and cattle ranching, real cattle ranching. This really does remind me of Texas. This is like the Texas of Canada somehow. Like, it's unique in its own Canadian way, and it's got its own things, but I can really relate this back to the US, funny enough. It's got Rocky Mountains, it's got cold winters, okay. People will deal with that if it means not going completely bankrupt, I think. Skiing, Great Plains, the Badlands, forest, red deer, ooh. A lot of oil production, I didn't know that. Elk, black bears, cool. Seems like a pretty cool place. Very like rustic and rural, outdoorsy, that kind of thing. There's a lot of farms and oil production. I'm getting a lot better grasp of just Alberta, which is what I wanted. Like, what's going on in Alberta? And also I wanted to learn about some of the reasons Google says Canadians are moving to Alberta. In the first quarter of 2023, 31,000 people moved to Alberta from other parts of Canada. Their largest ever recorded migration growth since the 1970s. Why are they doing this? Why are Canadians moving to Alberta? More reasons. Job openings, highest median wages, and lowest taxes. Really? This is all really starting to come together. This is starting to make sense. It all has to do with finances, which is, for better or for worse, probably the number one motivator for people and households. Finances, living, money, housing, affordable housing, your job, taxes. It's got high median wages, low taxes, good housing prices, higher average pay, job openings. I can't argue with any of this. This literally makes total sense why Canadians and people around the world are immigrating to Canada. I mean, and particularly Alberta, not just Canada, but Alberta in particular. I'm pretty sure Canada in general is pretty popular, for immigration in general. A lot of people around the world do want to immigrate to Canada in general. And now I'm learning a lot of them, specifically Alberta. Those are the challenges. Yeah, they're at 4.7 million. Probably going to grow to 5 million. Wow, that's fascinating. Well, I think, that satisfies me. I came in here with a question and a very, very interesting premise of Canadians moving to Alberta in record numbers. And I learned it's not just Canadians, it's people around the world. And why are they doing this? Because money. Money, finances, financial strain, trying to find a job, trying to find a house. Alberta is really, really attractive in all those areas. So I'm actually very satisfied. My question has been completely answered, I think. So I really enjoyed learning about this topic. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment, perhaps with your thoughts on people moving to Alberta, or your thoughts on Alberta and living there and why it's so attractive. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada and Canadian culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.